I know you played collegiate soccer at Louisville, right?
Oh, wow. Look at you. Did your research. Play is a harsh term. I didn't see any field action. I went to Louisville to play soccer is usually what I tell people. But I realized that I liked basketball way more than soccer, and ultimately after the first couple practices, knew I wasn't good enough to play college soccer at the level that I felt like I wanted to. And at one point, my coach told me that I'd spent way too much time on the basketball court than on the soccer field. So, yeah, man, I started off as a high school basketball player. Loved the game. Always wanted to be on the court. I was 5'8", and so I thought I was this D1 caliber player on the basketball court, but I definitely was not. Especially now that I'm in it, and you're seeing the athletes that are going head-to-head every day at this level, you got to have some God-given abilities and some God-given gifts to be able to play at this level. And so at the end of the day, man, I was a normal college student at the University of Louisville, loved my time there, ultimately met my wife there. Now, she'll be the one to tell you she's got 2 national championship rings in dance on the dance team. She was part of the Lady Birds there at Louisville. The world-famous Lady Birds, as they would say. So, but no, she's really the athlete in our family, and where my kids get it from. So, they from there, man, I went down to Western Kentucky after graduating from Louisville. Kept playing soccer down there. Coached a couple AAU teams here and there, basketball-wise, and kind of fell in love with coaching at that point. And so, went on to be a high school freshman coach at South Oldham High School, just outside of Louisville. Blessed with some really good freshman teams, won a couple freshman championships, which really got my itch going. At that point, man, my wife was in physical therapy school. And so, went down just to make some extra money. I had just a bachelor's degree in education, and was kind of the low man of the totem pole in the school world. Was coaching, like I said, but money just wasn't great. So, just to help make ends meet, I went and worked at random college camps. 2 of them that I ended up working were VCU and Florida State. And both of them at that point offered me a GA position. That was 2013. And my wife, like I said, had just started PT school, so I wasn't going to leave her and go to those different places. And so I told those coaches at that time, it was Shaka Smart at VCU and Leonard Hamilton at Florida State. And I said, man, if this opportunity is available 2 years from now, I'd love to do it. They both said, great, well, let's get together then. And so I continued to work both those camps the next couple summers. And Coach Ham ultimately, pulled me aside after one of the camps and said, man, what would you do if I told you I found my wife a job? Or found your wife a job? And I said, oh, Coach, I'd be down here tomorrow. And he said, all right, great, I'll see you tomorrow. And so, man, he's been such a blessing in my journey. Was a GA for him for 2 years. That was a big gamble. Like, that was a huge gamble, going from being a paid benefits. I'm in my 30s. I had just turned 30. Going from being kind of solidified myself. I was an assistant coach on a team at South Oldham that went to the first 2 state championships, or state tournaments in program history. That's in Kentucky. That's hard to do, and there's no class structure in Kentucky basketball. And so at the end of the day, that's like making it to the Final Four, or like the College World Series in baseball. So, that South Oldham team this year actually made it again to the state tournament. I think they made the Final Four. So what Steve Simpson did there, I was blessed to work with him for 5 years. But yeah, man, from there I left Florida State after 2 years of being a GA. Loved my time there. Had, I think, 5 or 6 future NBA guys there: Terrence Mann, Malik Beasley, Jonathan Isaac, Trent Forrest. Who else? Dwayne Bacon. Man, some real talent. I mean, my second year there, we finished second in the ACC, in a loaded ACC. But anyway, man, from there I went to Little Rock. Was the video coordinator there under Wes Flanagan, and after 1 year, they let him go. And so the new coach, Darryl Walker, kept me on in kind of an assistant role. But Wes called me maybe 2 or 3 months later and said, "Hey, man, I'm over here at Auburn. Would you like to join me?" And I said, "You kidding me?" That next year, we went to the Final Four in 2019. And then ever since then, I think we've won 5 championships. I think I've been a part of 4 championships. We've won 5 championships as a program in the past 7 years. So, man, the rest is kind of history coming off of this most recent 2025 Final Four run.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned worked at
South Oldham.
South Oldham.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to say West Oldham for some reason.
It's all about the directional schools. Come on, man.
What were some of the things you picked up from Coach Simpson that kind of helped you either build kind of your arsenal of knowledge, or maybe some connections that you developed to kind of help get you further on into your coaching career?
Coach Simpson liked to spray it. He spread it and spray it. And so that was kind of the trend that was starting to happen in college basketball at that time. And Coach Simpson had played like that his whole coaching career. And so he was kind of a front runner in all of that at the high school level. We led the state in threes almost every year. And so, that style of play, pressing, really attracted me to the game. That's how I like to play. That's how I like to coach. And so, being able to learn under his, coaching and his lessons and his plays during practice and how he taught. I mean, he had been doing it for so long, and he's a future Hall of Famer in my opinion in Kentucky. And he just being able to learn from him in my first 5 years as a young coach. I left there thinking I knew it all, after working with him, and so I definitely didn't. But he gave me an unbelievable, framework to be able to build my knowledge of the game. He trusted me with my own freshman program. He told me a couple things to run, but ultimately, man, he allowed me to have some freedom in that with the drills that we ran, and let me kind of make my own path in terms of the team. And like I said, in high school, you don't get to pick your players for the most part. But, man, I got blessed with some really, really good kids my first few years. And, ultimately went on to be a JV coach, and same thing. He let me, have my own team. He let me play up against the varsity team every day, which essentially was like me going head-to-head against him in practice. And so at the end of the day, man, you're ultimately only going to learn from the experiences that you get, and he gave me a lot of experience in practice to coach my own team and to go up against, like I said, what I believe to be a future Hall of Fame coach in Kentucky.
So you got the opportunity to kind of do your own thing, kind of freedom with running your own stuff like that. Do you think if he wouldn't have given you that freedom, do you think you'd be as knowledgeable as you are now? You think you'd be where you're at now, or do you think it was kind of just a blessing along the journey? It's funny, man, that I work for Coach Pearl now, and the flex offense that he runs, he has so many different tweaks to it, but that ultimately Coach Simpson always wanted the freshman team to run flex and to be able to understand flex. He felt like if you could teach that and you could learn that, then they could essentially run anything, because there's so many different aspects of the flex offense that you can read and react out of it. You can have a scripted play. You can back screen out of it instead of down screening, and being able to set screens and being able to read screens helps you in coaching, period, and helps a player in terms of getting open shots. And so he always felt like that should be sort of the foundation of the freshman team. But then from there gave you a chance to branch out. So I would go and research different things out of that and be like, well, what about this, coach? What about this? It's funny. I would always look at the swing offense that, some people call it that. We call it cutters here at Auburn. But, man, we used to look at Coach Pearl's stuff. And, we felt like, or at least I felt like I had a decent grasp on it. Man, I didn't know shit after I got, once I got to Auburn, I didn't know half of their options in that. And so, obviously
coming full circle here to now be at Auburn working under Bruce Pearl for the past 7 years. It's a pretty cool thing to look back on in terms of the path and the offense.
So you said high school, went on to Florida State, went out to UALR. And
Euler in the house.
And then now at Auburn, just announced, obviously, as the newest assistant coach. Would you say kind of the pathway that you've been taken into the coaching career, would you say, has it been slow? Has it been fast? I mean, what's the time frame that you kind of thought it would be versus what in reality what it is? What would be the differentiation between the two?
Yeah, I mean, there's everybody wants, especially in this day and age, everybody wants things quick. Mm-hmm. Like they want immediate success. Again, I started as a freshman high school coach. Really, even before that, 8th grade AAU coach, and so. I started kind of, at the bottom, and every path, man, is different, but mine was such a blessing. I honestly wouldn't trade it for anything. I will be honest with you and say, when I was a GA at Florida State, I was the oldest one. I was 30 years old. Every one of those guys, I was a GA with 4 guys, and then the next year we brought in 4 more. So ultimately, 8 guys. Every one of those guys except 2 within 3 or 4 years was an assistant coach at the D1 level. And so, of course, you start to look around, and I'm still, the nice thing is we're winning at Auburn. But human nature jumps in line every once in a while. And so, maybe after year 3 or 4, I'm looking around like, man, am I going to be a video coordinator at Auburn forever, But Coach Pearl's so loyal, and he understands the path, and he understands the work. We just had nobody leaving on our staff. At the end of the day, I'm still to this day the second youngest tenured guy on staff. I've been here 7 years. Coach Ira Bowman came in the same time I did, 7 years. The only new guy, quote unquote, is Corey Williams on our staff. Who's a former head coach at Stetson. He was actually at Florida State also just before I got there. He's been on our staff now 2 years, and he'll be the first to tell you now he's won 2 championships here since he's been here. So maybe he was the key ingredient. But of course you're starting to look around. But man, I can't remember the last name of this guy, but there was a book that I read early on in my career by Frosty. I want to say it's Whiting. And the title of it was Make the Big Time Where You Are. And that book was like 75 pages, and it resonated with me big time. I read it when I was a GA at Florida State, and it helped me in terms of my patience with understanding God has me right where he needs me and right where he wants me. Even the past couple years, I've had different assistant opportunities. But with all the changes in college athletics, with the NIL, with the winning that we were doing at Auburn, I've got 2 young kids. I got an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. It just made sense at this point in my life to stay put. And every time I prayed about it, God would just say, man, just stay patient. Just be patient. And that's kind of the theme word that kept coming around. Had we not been winning, would I have stayed as patient? I like to think so, but I don't know. But like I said, God knows what we can all carry on our shoulders, and he knows me better than anybody. So maybe that was part of me needing to relax and giving me the courage to stay put.
So is the goal at some point, which I'm assuming you'd like to be a head coach?
That's why I got in this thing, man. At the end of the day, like everybody I think wants their own program at some point. Everybody wants to see if they can end up being a guy like Bruce Pearl, a legendary coach that can take his teams to win championships. He's got such a great, like I said, offense. Defensively it matches exactly how I like to play. This year's team, the past couple of years with Janai Broome, we've slowed it down. We started 2 centers essentially last year with Janai Broome and Dylan Cardwell. So we slowed the pace down a little bit in terms of, for our tempo. But that 2019 team got after it, got up and down, pressed. We'll be a similar team to that this year, and that's the way I like to play. And so, being able to learn again from those type guys, run the offense that he runs, which has been successful. It's, a top 50 offense in every year. This year we were one of the most efficient offenses of all time. And so, shout out to Mike Burgomaster, who's our offensive coordinator, picking his brain on some of the things. He's one of the bright young minds in college basketball. And this staff, like I said, just has such a bond and such a friendship, even outside the court, that we bounce things off each other a lot. And again, because of that foundation, because of the brotherhood that we have, we're able to disagree while still having solid, conversations and respect.
Speaking, you spoke a little bit earlier about the kind of the landscape of college athletics right now kind of shifting. Obviously, newest report coming out saying that schools can directly pay players. How do you think that changes much? Do you think it just basically goes from schools finding loopholes to now, okay, we're just going to be outright doing what we were already doing? I mean, how drastically does the landscape change, or does it kind of stay the same?
Yeah, I mean, I think now that the government is involved, you see my voice. I'm cringing at that. But I mean, now it's going to be different. Like it's now, if you commit some sort of violation like that, you're not dealing with the NCAA. You're dealing with the federal government. And so, yeah, it's going to change some things. I think it's going to bring NIL more back to what it was meant to be. The revenue share stuff is great to be able to, let's be honest, these kids have brought in a lot of money to the university. Like Auburn is an extremely popular school, and part of that is because of the runs and the success that we've had on the basketball program, on the basketball court. So being able to put some of that money back in the players' hands is great, I think. Now it's going to go back to what NIL, like I said, was truly meant for, and that is not necessarily the collectives, but guys going out and being able to represent themselves within different businesses that want to support them and want them to advertise for their company, and so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of shifting in the landscape, but just like, the past 5 years in college athletics, as coaches, we read the rules and we adapt to them and try to find out what's going to give us the best competitive edge.
So how do you navigate in essence, every guy has an ego, right? How do you navigate the egos within the locker room? Because, let's take Drake Cardwell, for example. He does not have the popularity as Todd Pettiford. Sure. So businesses may not be as drawn to Drake as they are to Todd. How do you navigate that? Is that just something that Drake has kind of had to come to terms with? And Drake's just kind of a player that I'm pulling out of the hat. But, how does – I feel like a coach has to kind of step in and help navigate that, because you got to keep the locker room kind of steady to be able to have this success that Auburn has had these last several years. How do y'all manage that?
Yeah, we always say that to the victor go the spoils. And so whoever's winning, ultimately, Janai Broom's not a National Player of the Year candidate if we're not winning, right? Denver Jones isn't a defensive finalist, for NABC if we're not winning. And so at the end of the day, that locker room stays tight because we play 9 to 11 guys and everybody's getting their opportunity to play. Now, what you do when you're out there depends on your role, depends on your game, and so those things sort of work themselves out. As coaches, we don't need to dive into that too much. But, Todd Pettiford, for example, is a huge personality. He's an excellent basketball player. He's got a golden smile, and so at the end of the day, he's a good basketball player. He's marketable. People want to go use him as in advertisements. Like the coach ad that he's in that flies around Netflix all the time now. It's at the end of the day, I think their teammates are happy for one another. Drake, obviously, he's a walk-on for us. And so, he's excited to be on the team. He's happy to be on the team, and I think ultimately he's really excited for Tahad. We haven't had, obviously there's egos everywhere you go, but carving out those roles through practice, through play calling, through off the court interactions. We took a lot of our team down to Honduras on a mission trip, last fall, and understanding those bonds outside of basketball, without doing like too much pocket looking or pocket chasing, whatever, looking at somebody else's money. I ultimately think our guys, based on our culture, are just happy for one another and are cheering for one another.
I guess correct me if I'm wrong on this. It sounds like you guys, in a way, are kind of bringing in these guys that are going to have that character of the kind of humility and trust and loyalty towards each other. But on top of that, you guys are kind of doing these kind of team bonding events that also kind of reinforce those. Am I right on that?
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, in the transfer portal, it's hard to gauge somebody who they truly are in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. It just is. I mean, and so, with the revenue sharing and all that obviously becomes a piece. But it was amazing to me on all our Zoom calls how many guys flocked to the idea of faith and family within our program. And there were a lot of dudes that, picked Auburn over some really, really nice situations at other schools because of that piece. And so, we're just trying to be who we are. We're trying to promote who we are and ultimately bring guys that are going to reflect that. And so the Auburn culture to us, we say Auburn family every day during practice, and we mean it. I mean, I won't mention any names, but a couple of our transfers have told us this year even that, look, a lot of teams preach family, but when my son and daughter are sitting there eating dinner and watching an NBA Finals game with the guys, it gives a different message to our guys that, look, your families are welcome here, you are our family, and we're in this thing together.
You talk a lot about like family and culture. How long did it take? I mean, I know Coach Pearl got here a few years before you did, but I still feel like you were still able to be here long enough to really see the culture develop. How long has that taken, and what were kind of the foundation blocks that you guys have kind of focused on to kind of build that culture?
It's funny. So my first year, we had a team full of seniors and juniors. I mean, that 2018-19 team that went to the Final Four was an older team. There were two new assistant coaches, Wes Flanagan and Ira Bowman. They brought me in as video coordinator. And then the only new other player was a point guard that we got out of JUCO named Javon McCormick. Everybody else had been there for at least 2 years. Mm-hmm. And so they had bonded and built this relationship together. And so they had to welcome us into what they were doing, right? The next year, we were able to sort of mesh together that group of juniors that had just gone to the Final Four and now are seniors with a very young group of freshmen, Isaac Okoro, Al Flanagan, Devin Cambridge, Babatunde Akimbola. I mean, it was a young group mixed with an old group. And so those seniors ended up ultimately teaching those freshmen how to act and how to belong. Isaac Okoro was like our sixth senior we used to talk about because he was so mature and almost like a grown pro already that he stepped right into that team, and the rest of the freshmen sort of followed suit. Then COVID hit. And so we had a brand new team. We were, I think, the second youngest team, or like at least one of the top 10 youngest teams in college basketball with Sharif Cooper, Justin Powell, Dylan Cardwell, that Jalen Williams, that whole group, and we knew we weren't going to go to the tournament, and so the culture really at that point, Sharif Cooper was a household name amongst people that love basketball. And so, from there, we really preached, look, we're young, but we belong. We're young, but we belong. The year after that, with Walker Kessler, KD Johnson, we brought those guys in transfers, and we had Jabari Smith coming in as one of the top freshmen. That's really when our culture took off. And they had, 6 a.m. workouts. They and all the previous teams had this too, but we were so young during that COVID year, we really had to like reshape back into what we were during that 2019 Final Four year. And that team really started. They won the SEC. We were number one in the country for a little bit. And from there, that's the type of kids that we've tried to recruit, guys that, wanted to play hard, that wanted to fly around in a system and ultimately, put family and faith first. And that's where we've tried to kind of lay our groundwork. And I mean, Dylan Cardwell being part of our program the last 5 years, his walk with the Lord is well documented in social media. We took the team to Israel in 2022, so that's been a staple for us. We're hoping to go back there in 2026, and so that's just who we are. What would God have us do, and we're not, and none of us are perfect, and we know that, but we're going to strive to do what makes him happy.
Gotcha. 2 final questions. One should kind of be a quick one, and I'll save that one for the last one. But what would you say makes Coach Bruce Pearl different? Because me being a high school coach past few years, like I watched 2 of y'all's practices. The drills y'all run, like I don't mean this in any disrespect. They're basic. They're simple. They're nothing extraordinary, and they're things that my teams have done. But obviously my teams have not accomplished a national number 1 overall seed. They've not accomplished anything like what Auburn has in the past tenure of Coach Pearl. So what would you say is kind of that one thing that really separates him from all these other coaches? And then the second question kind of piggybacks off that. What is something from him, it may not be that thing that you think separates him, but what's something from him that you are hoping to continue and take on your journey to hopefully become a head coach?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that he does best out of anything is taking advantage of mismatches. He understands our players' talents and knows how to take them to their talents. Once he puts them in position, he is elite at creating mismatches and letting his players get to what they're best at. If you are an unbelievable scorer around the rim, a.k.a. Janai Broom, we're going to get you as many open touches around the rim against smaller dudes that we can. And that's why he was an All-American. If you are a freaky athlete and can really get downhill, a.k.a. Isaac Okoro, we're going to get a guard to switch on to you, and we're going to give you driving lanes to be able to get you to go downhill, which is, again, with his strongest hand, which for him, he could go either way. And so, we were able to have gaps and drive gaps with him, anytime we wanted. And that year I think we were top 10 in the country in fouls drawn. And so, now we've got Keyshawn Hall, we've got Tahad Pettiford, we got Elijah Freeman. I mean, we got guys that can really get downhill, and really shoot it. And so Coach Pearl will take those talents, take what they do best, create the mismatch to where we're going to get, essentially the worst version of the other team going against the best version of our team. His ability to do that in scouting has been phenomenal and a real asset for me to learn from the past 7 years. And again, being a video coordinator, is part of God's plan. Is I'm on every scout team, so I'm sitting in every one of those meetings watching that. And so just taking what you just said in terms of me going forward as a potential head coach, I've learned how BP operates on a day-to-day basis and what he looks for when he's scouting, what he looks for when we're about to go up against an opponent, what kind of defenses we can shift to if something's hurting us, what sort of offenses we can run within a system. Right now we're doing a lot of the groundwork. This is a brand new team. At practice the past 2 days, there's literally not one player that's been a part of our program longer than 2 weeks. And so we're having to teach a lot of those fundamentals, which has been great for us, reteaching a lot of that stuff so that they can understand, how we need to play to win. And it's like I told the team today. I think a lot of people think we're going to be pretty good offensively. I think they know that we're going to be able to score. What the thing that's going to drive our season, and it's going to be our, either our floor or our ceiling in terms of what kind of success this team can have, will be our defense. And our defensive system is a little different than a lot of teams. We will switch it up quite a bit, but we ice ball screens on the side, and I love keeping people out of the middle. And so ultimately, when we start going through our ball screen stuff with these guys, the length that we have, I think, can really disrupt teams this year.
Do you have any final thing, kind of advice or something you'd give to any coach kind of trying to get to either where you're at and potentially further?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that sticks out in most things is effort and energy, and you could take that in coaching as well. I mean, I've learned a lot from Coach Pearl. His effort and energy is unmatched to me and any coach. It's his work study, his film study, his recruiting study. I mean, he's texting me right now telling me about a couple guys at the NBA Top 100 camp, and he's just an unbelievable evaluator and studier of the game. And he's got such an eye for it. So, being able to have the knowledge of the game, but being able to apply it in a teaching sense, to me, separates you guys from other coaches. And that's sort of how you start to separate yourselves among, teams and players. And, we always say here, faith and family for sure, but kids really don't know how much you love them until you show that love. We tell our guys, like, we don't love you right now. We don't know you like that. But those experiences that you go through, build love, build character, and so at the end of the day, the work that goes into it, the love that you're going to show your guys, and then your persistence, effort, and energy are the things that will catapult you, in my opinion, to where you want to be, if the work ethic, again, is there, and if the faith and family stuff is there. So,
all right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, man. War Eagle.